Okay, it looks like we've got everyone admitted from the waiting room. Okay, well, we'll get started today. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ellen Harrell, and I am the Director of Strategic Partnerships and Communications for the National Grazing Lands Coalition. I see a lot of familiar faces on our Graze on Overcall today, and we are thrilled to have every one of you because today you are going to meet our newest team member, Ashley McDonald, who is now the NatGLC Executive Director. Ashley, do you have a little bit you'd like to share to kick us off?
Yeah, well, thanks, Ellen. Thanks for kind of running the show today, and thanks everybody for joining. I'm excited to not only be on the webinar today, but to be almost finishing up my 4th week at NatGLC. So I am just thrilled to be here, and I don't know if you want me to kick it off with a little background, but I know my co-panelist, Rob Cook, our chairman, is also on here. So I can give a little intro and then turn over to Rob to do the same if that's okay, Ellen. Okay, perfect. Well, again, thanks everybody for joining my again 4th week here, and I'm just thrilled to have started as executive director for National Grazing Lands Coalition. It's one of those organizations that I have always had just the highest respect for, and kudos to those of you on the line, I'm sure, that were involved in forming the organization back in the 90s, but also who are on the board now, and also our staff who have done such a great job. I'm really excited to join an organization that has such a strong foundation on which to join and build on. So for those who don't know me, I see a lot of familiar faces on as well, but I'm originally from the Midwest and went to Mizzou for my AgriCon degree, and then was out in DC for a number of years working for National Cattlemen's Beef Association as environmental counsel on regulatory issues, as well as lobbying on the Hill on environmental matters. So familiar with the policy space at the national level, as well as the state level. I worked with Missouri Farm Bureau as well. And then our family moved to the Denver area to work for National Cattlemen's, again, as on sustainability issues, which was a really rewarding experience to work with the U.S. Roundtable for Sustainable Beef, and in a really broad group of stakeholders. And so I do bring a lot of those relationships and experience with me, and that was a really rewarding experience as well. And so that kind of has brought me to NatGLC, where again I just am so passionate about the mission to providing kind of the services and the support that our grazing lands managers need. And so just thank you all for, not only the opportunity, but again, for having the forethought to build such an organization that I think is so important to not only our agricultural community, but also for our stakeholders, our consumers around the world to understand the value that you provide and bring every day through our grazing lands. So with that, Rob, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Ashley. Man, it's a pleasure to be able to introduce you today and have you on and have everybody on. There's several faces that I recognize, and I know there's several on here that I've worked with in the past. But just for those that don't know me, I've been chair of the board since September. I represent the Society for Range Management on the board of directors. I grew up in the Texas Panhandle, small farming and ranching community, and my dad's family farmed south of town, and my mom's family ranched north of town. So I got to build enough fence and set in the tractor long enough to know that I kind of wanted to go to college. So I attended Angelo State universities for both degrees, and then started with the NRCS right out of college. And worked as a rangeland specialist in a DC kind of throughout the state of Texas for about 12 years. And then was able to go to the Noble Research Institute in Ardmore, Oklahoma, and managed a consultation, multidisciplinary consultation group there for a couple of years before I had the opportunity to come back home to the Texas Panhandle. And now I serve as the Director of Business Development for Bammert Seed Company. We're a native grass seed company, produce and sell native grass seed. We also have a cow-calf herd and a stocker operation on our farms that I manage the grazing on. And then I'm involved with my family, my wife's family's dry land farming operation in eastern New Mexico. So that's kind of my background and how I got here. And I had the opportunity to work with Texas and National GLC early on in my career with NRCS. So it's always been a passion of mine. That GLC has always been a passion of mine, and the uniqueness of it being a producer-led organization, I think, is vital to ensuring technical assistance and research and education for our nation's grazing lands. So I feel honored to start early in my career being involved, and for it to become a passion, and now to be able to contribute it where I can. So yeah, great to see everybody, and thanks.
Yeah, so to kind of kick off with question and answers, we have a few questions prepared on our side, and then we would love for all of our participants, if you have questions throughout, to definitely put those in the chat, as well as we will have a time for questions at the end. But just to kind of get the conversation started, Rob, would you talk a little bit more about the history of National Grazing Lands, why it was created, and just kind of where we've been and where do you think we're going now?
Sure. I know maybe a lot of us know this story, or maybe even involved in this story, but it's always good to review and remember where we came from. And for those that haven't heard it, I think it's great to understand. Basically, the organization started in 1991 in Bozeman, Montana. So there were representatives from 22 different states and basically 6 different organizations that met in Bozeman. And the reason for the meeting is they were concerned about the amount of funds and the amount of resources that were going to the nation's grazing land for technical assistance and for helping grazing land managers across the nation. They felt that after the '85 Farm Bill, a lot of the funding and the resources from NRCS were going to conservation compliance and other programs that were established within that Farm Bill. And that there was a need for a group to come together to help with conservation, mainly technical assistance on the nation's grazing lands. So from that meeting, the Grazing Lands Conservation Initiative was formed, the GLCI. And that's what this group was originally. there was, like I said, 6 national organizations that were kind of part of that first meeting that agreed to sponsor GLCI. They were the American Farm Bureau Federation, the American Forage and Grasslands Council, the American Sheep Industry, the National Association of Conservation Districts, the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, and the Society for Range Management. So from there, we've kind of matured into now the NatGLC, the National Grazing Lands Coalition. So we're no longer an initiative. We're a coalition, getting things accomplished on the ground for our nation's grazing land producers. We've also been joined by 7 other member organizations that now make up the 13 total. So we mentioned the 6 earlier, but now the dairy industry, the Indian Nations Conservation Alliance, the National Farmers Union, the Noble Research Institute, Public Lands Council, Soil and Water Conservation Society, and Small Farmers and Ranchers. So the unique thing about it is the board is made up of representatives from each one of those member organizations, but everybody on the board is also a producer, a grazing land producer. So we've kind of evolved. Originally, the focus was kind of more on private lands. NRCS being one of the reasons for that, but we've evolved to consider topics for public lands also, and having PLC become a member, a member organization has been a big help with that. But Ellen, that's kind of where we started, and kind of how we got to where we are today. But I think we'll discuss a little bit more about what we're doing and what we have going on, and things for the future also. But that's kind of our background, our history, and our foundation.
Yeah, great job putting that all together, Rob. Ashley, would you mind talking about the NatGLC's strategic initiatives?
Yeah, I think it's thanks, Rob, for that kind of that lead in, because I think it sets us up well for the 4 key pillars that the board and staff have really aligned around to drive us kind of forward in the relatively near term, but also guide us towards our long term, right, which is our mission of providing those services to our communities and the planet. And so those 4 key pillars have focused around promoting the value of our grazing lands. And healthy grazing lands. So really understanding and establishing all of the ecosystem services we provide and grazing lands provide to society and our communities and the planet. And so that's a key pillar. Another one is advocating for the needs of our grazing land managers. And so I think that's that one's probably the easiest one to pull out of our mission, right? To provide and advocate for what they need on the ground. And so that one always comes to the forefront of my mind. And so we'll continue to do that in various ways, whether that is on Capitol Hill, right, through the Farm Bill, or whether that is with key stakeholders and influencers going forward. And related to that, communicating the message of stewardship is key. And Ellen, you know this well, right? In the world in which we live today, social media is a huge part of it, and in reaching the stakeholders that care about either issues or what we do every day. It's really important to be able to communicate what you're doing every day on the land with all of those stakeholders. And that's no easy feat, considering agricultural producers get smaller as a percentage compared to the population every day, right? So a big piece of our work kind of going forward is to expand our presence in that space. And thankfully we have Ellen on board to help us do much of that. And one of the ways we can do that too is really under that 4th pillar, which is to develop national and state partnerships. So there's only so much we can do as an individual national organization without both our state partners and our state coalitions, our member organizations, as well as really thinking strategically about other partnerships, and expanding our influence, or I always kind of say expanding the megaphone, right? If you can have a bigger megaphone, you can reach more, more folks. And that applies not only about the communicating the ultimate message, but then also comes back full circle in helping to advocate for either more resources or different types of support that's needed on the ground. And so it really, all four of those key pillars of the strategic plan really work together and are kind of circular in nature, because they feed each other. And so I'm really excited that strategic plan is in place, and then I can help work with our staff in kind of expounding on all of those, and moving us forward.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to having you on the team and the work we've already done together. You've been an incredible addition. I can hopefully speak for the whole staff in saying that. But now that we've discussed what our pillars are, what we stand for, why we were created, Rob, would you go on and tell more about some of the boots on the ground work we've been accomplishing this year and just in the past?
Sure, Ellen. Yeah, thank you. I think the first thing I have to start with, and everybody who's a member of other organizations or state coalition or whatever it is, knows exactly what I'm about to talk about, and it's the strength of our staff. And our staff has been our strength. I can speak for the board specifically. Our staff has been our strength since we started in 1991. And I think Monty dropped off because it's raining in College Station, and for some reason College Station can't get internet. But hopefully she's able to get back on pretty soon. Lost her, and what Monty's done and the history of her leadership and where she's got us to. Kim Stein coming on and the amount of experience that she brings on and what she's been able to do. Ellen bringing us into the 21st century a little bit, and some of the things that we're able to accomplish and able to do now. But we've got a great staff that the growth has happened exponentially. We go from 5-6 years ago, Kim, to maybe one on staff to now having 5 or 6. And so growth has been happening exponentially, which has brought us to a great place. We're ready to take the next step forward, and having Ashley on board to add to that staff is great to help us do that. So we talk a little bit about how we are getting, I think you said the boots on the ground, Ellen, how the rubber's meeting the road here, and what we're actually accomplishing right now, what we've done just here recently within those pillars that Ashley discussed. So one of the first things that we've done is, or that I want to discuss, is there's a huge demand within NRCS for trainings. Their workforce has shifted some, and they're hiring a lot of folks. So there's a lot of new folks coming on board, and one of their big needs is training. And so that really fits our mission and vision, because a well-trained NRCS staff workforce helps provide outcomes to the nation's grazing land producers. So one of the things they're really looking for, and Roger Gates is a new staff member that's come on as kind of our education coordinator, and he's leading a lot of this training that we're doing, specifically the WELP courses, the Working Effectively with Livestock Producer courses for NRCS. If you haven't been involved in one of those courses, seen one of those courses, I think with my experience with NRCS, I think this is probably, if not the best, one of the best trainings that's available to these NRCS employees. But so far this year, we've conducted those trainings in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Minnesota. So those are specific agreements with those states to help provide these trainings. We will have we'll have some more this year in San Angelo, Texas, 2 in Decatur, Texas. We still have Arkansas to go this year also. We'll be doing a plant animal or herbivore interaction training in San Angelo for Texas NRCS this year. And then next year we will do Louisiana, Mississippi, Minnesota, and Arkansas again. There's a lot of demand for these trainings. There's several other states that are wanting these to happen. And we're working to develop the capacity and the strategic plan to be able to provide more of these, because we feel they really have direct outcomes, for the grazing land producers across the nation. So that's a big thing that we're accomplishing, that we're thinking we're really having some impacts and moving some needles there. We've been involved with Farm Bill discussions on the Hill and with our partners and with several different folks about the Farm Bill. We all know that's coming up. So of course we're educating about the importance of technical assistance through the Farm Bill. That's really where meets our mission and vision, and where we feel the need is to advocate for landowner needs, for grazing land and landowner needs through technical assistance. So everybody knows, kind of since the beginning, conservation on private grazing lands, which is kind of earmarked funds for GLCI or NatGLC, has been in the Farm Bill since 1995. It's really never been allocated or funded. So kind of our goal is just to make sure that everybody's aware that needs to continue on in this new Farm Bill. So hopefully the possibility of those funds being allocated, being spent to help with technical assistance and research and education on nation grazing lands. We have the capability or the opportunity for those funds to be utilized when the timing's right. So that's kind of been our discussion on Farm Bill recently. Another one of the things that Ashley kind of alluded to in some of our pillars is advocacy education. So another one of those pieces, we just worked with one of our partner organizations or our member organizations, PLC. BLM has a rule that just came out, and it's the proposed conservation and landscape health rule. So we did give some comments to BLM from the NatGLC perspective on that rule. So if you're not familiar with that rule, it makes conservation a new use that's on par with other uses. And it gives BLM kind of the power for conservation leases to supersede or eliminate those other uses on federal lands. Basically, grazing being the primary concern for us, so that these conservation leases have the potential to override grazing. And in our opinion, and probably everybody on this call's opinion, that grazing is a vital tool for conservation of our nation's public lands. And maybe the definition of conservation is a little bit different in our eyes than this definition. But for those reasons, we strongly encourage BLM to withdraw this proposed rule, and then to work with stakeholders and other people to develop a robust, meaningful rule if it's needed, and kind of change that and to meet their stated goals that are already in place. Also, we've got a bus tour coming up in Vermont, in Burlington, Vermont. We're very excited about. It's in Burlington, September 5th through 7th. At grazinglands.org, you can sign up for that. But we're making 5 stops on this bus tour. We're kind of our central hubs in Vermont. We'll leave from there every morning. But from dairy operations to operations that have on-farm processing plants, to operations that are really engaged with education, regenerative farming, kind of farm to plate models. I think it's going to be a great time to see part of the country that I personally have never spent much time in, but I'm really excited to see the diversification of these operations and get to understand a little bit about how folks do some things, in that part of the world. It'll be exciting to see. And just so if you're interested in joining us there, we would love to have everybody. And there is a Ranchers Resiliency Grant through NCBA and Cargill. I think Cargill kind of funded, but it's administered through NCBA. It's a grant to help support cattle producers' attendance in impactful education events. So there is some of that, some funding there for folks to go. If have any questions about that, you might contact staff and we'll kind of point you in the right direction for that. I will also mention that at our board meeting there that we will be having some elections, and one of those elections is for an at-large position. So we'll be sending out a call, I think, very soon, some emails to state coalitions, state and partners, and maybe some social media presence. But we kind of rely on state coalitions to bring forward nominations for these at-large positions to the board of directors. And the key to that is to make sure that we have the tie back to our state and local areas and allow that to happen where it's a little easier. We have to this board member doesn't have to represent one of our member organizations. So just put that out there, and there'll be more to come from that. But if there is some nominations, please contact staff with that. And then I talk about staff, how great they are. We're constantly working on new agreements and trying to add capacity and add technical assistance across the nation. So, we do have several of those going on, Ellen, that there's something always in the pipeline and something we're always working on.
Well, that is the perfect segue to my next question for Ashley. Can you talk about some of these new agreements? And then I think as well, for some folks on the call, that word agreement, can you define what that even means to begin with and how that helps us do the work that we do?
Yeah, it's a great prompt there, Ellen. So thank you for telling me to do that. But yeah, so we work, with NRCS to build, what we call agreements, which is to provide, certain things, right, that they then put through our organization that we're able to put on the ground. So those are key and extremely important, obviously, and a big major part of what we do. And some of those new agreements that we are working on with NRCS provide many of those same types of services that Rob just talked about, trainings around understanding pasture condition scoring and communicating science with stakeholders. And so those are key important trainings. And one in particular too, and Rob was I think kind of leading me there, which is to talk about capacity, right? And to grow. There is this need for trainings. There's the need for technical assistance providers on the ground, right? So there's two things there. And so some of them, some of the agreements we're working on is, and we're very close. So, Kim and Monty have been working on it to get an agreement that would provide for some regional coordinators that would provide that technical assistance to producers across the country. And so I think that's hugely beneficial in kind of expanding not only the capacity of us as an organization, but providing those services that we know are needed by our producers on the ground. So that's a big one. And I'd say the other thing that we're working on, and probably outside of maybe our term agreements, right, a little less formal than that, is just to really build our partnership network. And I think that's both through our member organizations, through our state coalitions. And again, and I kind of mentioned this already, but to also that maybe that broader category of those that are even outside those two areas. So those are things that we're working on, as well as just having, oh gosh, in my relatively short time, completing my 4th week here, had many conversations with different organizations, to just wanting to understand what NatGLC does, and if there's opportunities that align with what they want to accomplish, where we can work together. And again, I come back to those pillars, but those partnerships are going to be key long term to being able to accomplish our mission.
Gotta unmute. As much as Rob said, I'm taking you into the next century. I still, that mute button gets me every time. Well, continuing that conversation, Ashley, you having been here for nearly a month now, what is your future vision for NatGLC, and where do you want to go?
Yeah, what an exciting time. I'll start with that. Maybe I might see it more than many on the call do, just being at different venues and hearing from all kinds of different presentations and stakeholders all over. But we are really in a point in time at which there is a huge focus on all of agriculture, but a growing and growing focus on grazing lands as such an asset to society and the planet, and preserving that, as well as optimizing it is really a focus, and a growing focus. And that means we're more probably in the spotlight than we have ever been before. And that brings challenges, certainly, but I do firmly believe that is also an opportunity. It's not only an opportunity for our organization, but it's an opportunity for all of us in the industry to be able to ultimately get the credit for everything that we have or will do on the ground. And why that promoting and the communicating pillars really espouse what I'm getting at, which is being able to advocate for the right resources, getting them deployed, and then and what I think can matter hugely in the overall sustainability of our industry, frankly, is people knowing about those efforts and the outcomes of those efforts. So I'm extremely excited for the leadership of Rob and the whole board to really pursue some of that, and grow, so that we can not only do more with education, research, and technical assistance, and get that on the ground, but then also share that story. And I promise I'm not just saying that because Ellen is our moderator today, but I do believe that that's hugely important. And then part of that can't happen again without being able to expand our networks and expand our opportunities with others. Because again, if everybody's ready to go, right, and everybody's focused on this, we have to be able to find good partners that help us do that in the best way, with frankly, without not compromising on any of our principles and our mission. So I think I'm excited about that as well. I'm excited about pursuing paths maybe that we haven't before, and I know that there's just an eagerness from our board to do that, and I'm excited about that, and the confidence that they're showing us as staff to be able to go in that direction. And I think Rob mentioned it, but I'll mention it again. One of the values that that we provide, and it's kind of related to those partnerships and our capacity, is providing those venues for folks to communicate and understand that they have shared vision or shared values. And our National Grazing Land Conference does exactly that. It's not only a place to learn practices or new research, but it's an opportunity to develop those new relationships and those networks, to be able to share the story of our nation's grazing lands. And so I do want to make sure everybody sign up for the bus tour in Vermont. Make sure when we roll out registration for our National Grazing Land Conference early next year, you get signed up for that as well, because I think we all have a hand to play in facilitating and sharing. You can share just every day what you do on your farm or ranch, and that can be hugely valuable to us as a staff at the National Grazing Lands Coalition, to be able to use that story and to benefit grazing lands across the country. So I'm excited about a lot of things, but those are a couple that stick out to me in particular that I'm really looking forward to, and working with you and Kim and Monty and Roger and everybody on staff, as well as Rob, Charlie, and the full board, and to carry out that mission.
Thank you, Ashley. Before I kick it back to Rob, I just want to mention that on behalf of the staff, our board is made up of full-time producers, full-time professionals in the agricultural industry, and they spent a lot of time going through all of the applications and interview process to ensure that Ashley was hired and that we would have just a really exciting new leader to bring us to the next phase and all the things that Ashley just spoke on. So our board is an integral part of representing all of the issues that Ashley just brought up. But on behalf of the board, Rob, would you mind just talking about what are y'all most excited about as we see kind of this new era for Nat GLC?
Sure, Ellen. Yeah, thank you. Let's start off by saying I'm proud of where we've come from. The biggest thing we're excited about is the future, and that might sound a little cliche, a little corny, but I feel confident that in 1991, I wasn't in that meeting, I wasn't in the room, but in 1991, there might not have been as much excitement about the future as there is today. And that's a testament to the organization. But Ashley touched on it too. It's also where we are. There's a lot of questions being asked right now about how ecological services are going to be provided to society. And it just so happens that the nation's grazing lands are in a position to answer those. That's exciting. That's very exciting. And it's exciting that we're an opportunity to help our producers, help the nation's grazing land producers take advantage of those. It's exciting that to me that a lot of folks on this call, state coalitions, partners, that one of our goals, one of our focus is to help provide capacity to these folks to get technical assistance, to get this assistance to help our grazing land producers take advantage of these opportunities, and to help them, keep their families on the land, help continue to make a living while they're, stewarding our natural resources, our ecosystem services through proper management, conservation, not preservation. So that's what I'm really excited about, and Dr. Butler, I saw your comment here about the 60 million in the conservation private grazing lands and where it was placed in the farm bill and for new staff. And I'm excited that that's evolved some too, and that there's opportunities to think outside the box on how that 60 million is going to be used, and that we've evolved as a group, and NRCS has evolved as an agency for some ways to accomplish that. And I think you're right, 60 new staff is not enough, especially we're talking about grazing lands just rangelands and looking at a bigger picture. And so I think there's some strategic things that we could do within that to capitalize on that funding when it's time for that to happen, and to leverage and multiply those dollars just outside of the farm bill. That's exciting that the industry is in a place where we can start leveraging these dollars in different places and using industry partners to help do that. It's an exciting time for all of us. And a lot of times we focus on the negative and the bad things that have happened, but we're in a great spot as grazing land managers and as an industry to really take the next step forward. We got to start telling that story, all of us as a producer, to get that out there, to take that next leap that we're going to be able to do. Thanks for the opportunity to share that, Ellen.
Thank you, Rob, and thank you, Ashley, for just being our co-hosts today, sharing the message of NatGLC, and just all of the excitement, all the things we have to work for, because truly our nation's grazing lands are worth fighting for, as well as the solution to many of these problems we've been talking about today.
May I say something?
Yes, I was just about to open it to the crowd.
Okay.
So
Okay,
perfect.
well, Rob, I was in that room in 1991, and I was in Bozeman, and I was in all the other meetings that happened, and in the meeting in Atlanta when it was started at 8 o'clock in the morning. We had a really short lunch brought to us. We broke for dinner. We met back, and we stayed in that room till 2 a.m. the next morning. So those people were not only excited, they were just small in number, but they were long in endurance and in spirit. And many of them have passed on. They have left us. I can name a few of them. They're all near and dear to me. But they did have excitement. It's just that it was a small voice at that time. We even had work documents, got them in file there somewhere, where we put together things that mentioned, they weren't called ecosystem services back then, but we did talk about what the properly managed lands did for water quality and for wildlife and soil erosion. And one time I even had developed a economic analysis, and the national office threw it back at me and said, we can't publish that. I said, why? Because it sounds too good. And that is true. It is too good for what you get with landowners doing what they do on their land, even without the cost shares that we're talking about today, the kinds of benefits. Somebody said, how could you say this much for air quality? I said, my grandparents, great-grandparents lived and died in the Dust Bowl. And my grandparents told me about people's cars in the panhandle of Texas that had all the paint sandblasted off of one side of the car. The other side was okay. But that is monetary damage. And we see that not happen in that great of an effect today, but we do see the effects, and those things can be measured. So I encourage Ashley and the staff to work on those things. I was the staff for several years, and I was NRCS. There's actually the Soil Conservation Service at the time, regional range conservationists for the West. And I worked on all of that with them. And there were some great people dedicated to what they were doing. Their ideas are still good, and y'all have embellished upon them. I should say expanded them. They're not embellishing. That sounds like it's not true, but you've moved forward, and I encourage you to keep doing what you're doing. I am so appreciative that there's more people and more organizations represented by GLC today than there was back then. But that's the way organizations happen. One other thing, you talked about public awareness of these benefits. We also had a 30-second public service announcement in which I had gotten Michael Martin Murphy to donate his talent. And we had the only PSA ever provided through the agency on the public benefits that grazing lands give to us. So there's just so much that's been done and so much more that needs to be done. And I think the fact that you've got as large a group as you have today, representing as many associations and meetings or membership, you can get even further down the road than you can probably imagine. But I think Ashley has got an imaginative mind, and she will imagine a whole lot of things with the help of everybody on the line here. And I just want to offer to you, Ashley, if there's anything from the past that could help that I know about, and I knew about a lot of it back then, just give me a call. Monty's got my number, or I can give it right here if you would like. It's area code 817-504-1604. That's my personal cell phone. And anyway, I'll shut up and let some other people talk, but thank y'all for letting me hear. I'm not blacked out because I didn't want you to see what I look like or my office, because I spent time making this office look good. I can't get the dadgum camera on this new laptop. It's set here and I think it's got viruses in it, and I'm just lucky I was able to get online at all. But anyway, it isn't that dark and gray at my house. So, thank y'all so much.
They have your cell phone. They have your cell phone number too, Larry.
Yeah. There you go.
Thanks, Dr. Butler. I think that's a good point about the work that it took to get here, and it's a great story about those meetings. And it is exciting that story you had to push for the benefits of properly managed grazing lands a little bit, maybe more for the understanding of those. And it's exciting that it seems like that understanding's come to the forefront a little bit more now, and maybe that all that work y'all did for everybody to have that understanding is really going to benefit us now, Dr.
Well,
Butler.
I'm not
Thank
trying
you.
to put myself in his class, but I think Thomas Edison would be surprised at the kind of light bulbs we got today too. So, technology has a chance to go forward in any field, and a lot of this technology is intellectual technology and informational in ways that you pass it on to others. And I see a number of my good friends on this deal, and I'm not going to start saying hello to people like Bob Mccan, because if I do, I have to say it to everybody. But hello to everybody. Thank y'all so much for being willing to carry the torch forward and get the job done. Thank y'all. I'm still an emeritus member. I'm not resigning, but I'm not a voting member. But as you'll learn over time, I am kind of a vocal one. So I'll shut up now and let you have the thing back, and I'll mute myself.
Thank you for your offer too. I will definitely take you up on that. Just sort of, talk through history a little bit more and what we have. So I'll work with Monty on that. But thank you so much for those words and everything you've done in the offer to help.
So we have just about 10 minutes left for our schedule. If anyone would like to ask any questions, it is open, or have any updates on opportunities for people on this call. This is also the foundation of our Graze On Over, is to just share collective information across the industry, across the country. So if you have anything to share, feel free to unmute yourself and or add it to the comments, and we'll are there more details about the 2024 conference?
Yes, I'd say, Ellen, to answer that, more details to come. We do have an RFP request, a request for proposals, out right now that will close just next week. And so for somebody to help us plan it. So we have a ton of staff resources there, and we're and so we'll be able to get some things up and going. I understand from our staff, we're a little behind the schedule, I think, from previous ones, but we'll get that RFP closed and move quickly to get registration and information up the first part of the year. So and it is, thank you, Kim, she put it in the chat too, but the official dates have been set and the location. So it is the 4th through 6th in December of next year. So you have over a year for planning purposes, and it's in Tucson, Arizona. and I think at the Hilton Conquistador, or something of that nature. So, so more to come there for sure, but put a hold on your calendar for those dates, and we hope to see you in Tucson.
I had a question. Can y'all hear me?
Yes,
Yep.
sir.
Yeah, this is Bob McCann. Well, first of all, I'd like to congratulate everybody, all the new folks coming on board, yourself, Rob, and leadership, and Ashley also, who's I've worked with a long time in other organizations, and I can tell y'all, we got a good one there. So, but my question was, I was very involved with Nat GLC many years ago, back going to some of that time period that Larry was talking about in the 90s, and not so much more recent, but have been active in our state GLC here in Texas. And I guess my question would be, kind of going forward, if there's any thoughts within the our future mission or strategies about how the Nationals GLCs going to interact with the state coalitions. I know it's been fairly loosey-goosey for a long time, and always have been very dependent on things from the national, but to me, it just seems like there might need to be a little firming up there as far as that national state structure and communication. So, Rob, have you got any thoughts about that, or anybody else? So.
Sure, I'll start and then let Ashley clean up my mess, Mr. Kane. But one of my goals to begin with, since I've come on board leadership, is to strengthen I think that's the first step, is to strengthen the relationships, existing relationships between existing coalitions and the national organization, and to streamline that communication pipeline between the two. And the second one is to add, one of my main goals, and one of our big roles that I think that this organization plays, is to add capacity, help those state coalitions add capacity, whether that's help through funding to add capacity, help through knowledge transfer, whatever it is. And then third is to really help and to push for maybe revitalizing some state coalitions that aren't active right now, but getting a representation across the nation in those states and those areas that don't have coalitions. I think that's vital too. So 30,000 foot view strategic, thank you. That's my thought process. And then I'll let Ashley kind of expand a little bit more on those strategies of what could be done to kind of help move that forward.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Yeah, and I'll just expound primarily on the first point you made, which is to strengthen those relationships. And I think Bob, to your question, there's quite a few ways, and obviously have worked with you in other organizations that have state partners as well, and have seen kind of good things and possibly some things not to do as well, in how to manage those relationships and strengthen them, because I think they are strengthened as state coalitions, as are we at the national level, when we can really trust and utilize each other to achieve our joint goals. So one of those things I think is to provide services, right? I really want to be able to be a valuable partner to states, and so we're looking at ways of how can we, and I know Kim and Ellen have both helped some state coalitions in providing strategic planning services, or just working with them. And Rob, you mentioned it, kind of capacity and how to develop staff, right? And professional development. So there's a lot of those types of services that could be of real value to strengthen the relationship between our national coalition and our state coalitions. But really ultimately also just build, keep using the word capacity, but such a good one, but build their ability to really do more for their producers, their grazing lands on the ground as well. And so that's the ultimate goal, because I think we all recognize that each of us, each organization achieving goals is benefits everyone. And so there's no, and I'm happy to also just take ideas. So any ideas that you might have, I put my email in the chat there too. So feel free to call or email at any point. I'm happy to chat about any of those ideas. But I'm glad you asked that question, Bob, because I think it's a really important one.
Thank you.
Looks like we have time for maybe one more quick question, if anyone wants to make any questions or comments. If not, we will go ahead and close out. Just so you guys know, this meeting has been recorded and we will add it to our YouTube page. So if you want to rewatch or send this along to someone else who might have missed it, it will be on there by the end of this week. But with that, just thank you all for joining us today, and we look forward to the next call.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ellen. Thanks, everybody. Have a
Thanks,
great day.
everyone.